All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a regular conference meeting of the Council of the Township of Montclair. Notice of this meeting has been provided to the local media, and notice has also been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and outside of the municipal building as well. This meeting is being broadcast live on TV channel 34 and is streaming live on Montclair TV 34 YouTube channel. It is available on demand and can and will be rebroadcast. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
the United States of America, to the republic,
which is one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I hope that's not an indication of how we're going to go tonight. Roll call.
Mayor Jackson,
Present.
Deputy Mayor McMahon,
here,
Councilor Baskerville,
Present.
Councilor Hurlock,
present,
Councilor Russo,
present,
Councilor Schlager,
Here,
Councilor Spiller.
Present. Thank you. We will go to public comment now. In an effort to minimize exposure to COVID-19 and to maintain social distancing practices, this May 5 Township Council meeting and further meetings until the pandemic is over will only be available to the public remotely. Comments from the public during this public comment session will also be conducted remotely. Those who wish to participate now during public comment should dial into 425-535-9484, 425-535-9484. Participants will be put in a queue. The administrator will notify callers when it is their turn to speak by saying the last two digits of their phone numbers, which will be displayed on our system. For example, a caller with the phone number 973-444-5555 will hear the administrator say, "Number 55, it is your turn to speak." The caller will then hear the word unmute and will be offered the opportunity to make his or her comment. Mr. Stafford and Mr. Fan.
Thank you, Mayor. Caller with the number ending in 14, it is your turn to speak. Caller number 14, please.
Yes. Yes, my name is William Scott. I'm the co-chair of the Montclair Housing Commission, and I'm the chair of the NAACP Housing Committee. On April the 24th, we sent a request into the Township of Montclair council members to introduce an ordinance for a rent increase freeze. Have not gotten any response back from any of the council members. Have they had a chance to consider this ordinance?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Councilor Spiller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. Mr. Scott, thank you for your question. This is Councilman Spiller here. Yes, I've had a chance to. One of the items on the agenda today that you may see for discussion is exactly that item. So I have been in contact with the township attorney to research the issue. Have had some conversations around the ability to move it forward and how we would do that. So we will have a conversation about that at this meeting today, and potentially, if there's a will, of course, move something. But that's the status. And thank you.
Mr. Scott, Councilwoman Baskerville here. I just wanted to let you know I did respond, and I immediately sent out and asked some of my council colleagues if they would second that so that we could get it on the agenda. I'm glad to see that it is on the agenda, but I CC'd you on that. I thought it was something that was well worth looking at, and I was in favor of it, so I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, there are no other callers for public comment at this time. None.
Thank you, gentlemen. Then we'll close the public comment period. We'll go to approval of minutes. There have been presented to the council the minutes of April 7, 2020. Are there any corrections or additions to those? I will move them.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have,
Aye.
thank you. We have two proclamations, one for Older Americans Month and the other for recognizing the importance of lupus awareness. Councilor Russo, you normally take the senior resolutions and proclamations. Do you want to read this one, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the Township of Montclair includes a growing number of older Americans who make countless contributions to our community every day, and whereas the Township of Montclair is stronger when people of all ages and backgrounds are included and encouraged to make their mark, whereas the Township of Montclair recognizes the importance of the physical, mental, social, and emotional well-being of its citizens, and whereas the Township of Montclair can support our community members by promoting independence, inclusion, and participation, engaging older adults through education, recreation, and service, and connecting people with opportunities to share their time, experience, and talent. Therefore, we, the Township of Montclair, do hereby proclaim 2020, May 2020, to be Older Americans Month. We urge every resident to recognize older adults and the people who support them as essential members of our community. I so move.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilor Baskerville?
Thank you, Mayor. This proclamation recognizing the importance of lupus awareness. Whereas lupus is a chronic autoimmune disease that affects people worldwide, including 1.5 million Americans, and is considered a serious world health problem. And whereas thousands of new lupus patients are diagnosed each year, 9 out of 10 of whom are women, especially those of African American, Hispanic, Asian, and Native American descent. And whereas lupus patients suffer from their own immune system attacking their body's tissues and vital organs, including kidney, brain, heart, lung, blood, skin, and joints. Lupus is a leading cause of death of premature cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, and stroke among young women. And whereas lupus currently has no cure and is one of the most difficult to diagnose because the symptoms come and go and can mimic those of other diseases, there currently exists no single test that can authoritatively identify the disease. And whereas early diagnosis and treatment of lupus can lessen the progression and severity of the disease and are vital to preserving health and preventing further complications, organ damage, and death. And whereas without an educated healthcare community, patients may suffer for years before obtaining a correct diagnosis and treatment. This demonstrates a need for increased public and professional lupus awareness. An informed community who understands the disease and its devastating impact on patients' lives can help facilitate these early diagnosis and better support the affected community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and the Council of the Township of Montclair recognize the importance of lupus awareness and urge Montclair community to seek out resources to educate themselves about this debilitating disease in an effort to better support all of those that are affected. And I so move.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'd just like
Aye.
to thank
Aye.
I'd like to thank Professor Judith Mills, who's one of our residents here, and she's a very strong advocate of the lupus community. And I don't know if anyone saw her article in the last Montclair Local. She was concerned that during this pandemic that oftentimes people that had disabilities were not considered enough. And so I'm very excited to be working very closely with her and some other advocates, not only with the lupus, but with other illnesses that may preclude people from feeling as though they are connected to the community at large.
Thank you. We have some new business resolutions on the agenda this evening. Resolution R20-079 is a resolution extending the grace period for second quarter property taxes. And I will just read the resolved paragraphs. Resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Montclair that pursuant to the authority provided by Governor Murphy's executive order, no interest shall be charged on any payment of second quarter 2020 property taxes paid on or before June 1, 2020, and be it further resolved that the Deputy Municipal Clerk shall notify the Director of the Division of Local Government Services in the Department of Community Affairs of the adoption of this resolution not later than the third business day following the date hereof.
Mr. Mayor, I'll so move.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate
Yes,
that.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Mayor, it's Councilor Hurlock, if I could, please.
Certainly.
Mr. Stafford, I know you and I have been following this for the last month or so. If you could just speak to a couple of the points, please, that we had discussed, I think it would be very helpful.
Certainly. We have, through the Finance Committee and the governing body, been following this, the governor's executive order, which turned out to be number 130, which was issued last week. We've been following its progress for the better part of the month. And of course, when the governor issued Executive Order 130 on, I believe, April 28th, the Finance Committee met and discussed the issue, the possible results and the ramifications, and that direction, our chief financial officer and our financial consultant dived in immediately and analyzed every possible contingency resulting from the possible granting an extension of the grace period for payment of 2020 second quarter property taxes without interest on or before June 1, and resultantly, this resolution is put on the agenda. So I can answer any questions, of course, any of you have further to that.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Stafford. I know that's something that many of their constituents have been asking us about over the last several weeks, so I appreciate your looking into that so quickly, as well as my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Stafford. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly. Councilor Spiller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilman Hurlock, and Mr. Stafford, I really just wanted to commend you, our CFO, and others for moving on it so quickly. I know we were all prepared to act if we were so given that authority. I know it was frustrating for us as many residents to know that the state was the one who obviously has legal authority as to extending this or not. So with rapid action, we were able to move on this once we got that authority. But I also want to commend our Finance Committee, Councilman McMahon, Councilman Hurlock, and you, Mr. Mayor, for really putting us in a good financial position to be able to afford to do that. I know one of the things that I talked about with you when we first discussed it was, can we meet payroll? Can we afford to send the dollars to the other entities that need to receive it at the certain deadlines that are before the next payment? So again, when we talk about reducing that debt, when we talk about building up that surplus, it's moments like this that it matters, Mayor. So that strong financial leadership over 8 years is what leads us to this point today, not just the last week or two. So I want to commend you, commend the committee, commend my colleagues, and thank you. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any
This
other?
is the rainy day.
Yeah, amen to that. Roll call?
Counselor Baskerville?
Yes.
Counselor Hurlock?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McMahon?
Yes.
Counselor Russo?
Yes.
Counselor Schlager?
Yes.
Counselor Spiller?
Yes.
Mayor Jackson?
Yes. Item B is a resolution authorizing the amendment of a not-to-exceed amount of Resolution 19225, authorizing a professional service agreement with Eric M. Bernstein Associates LLC, a special tax counsel for the Township of Montclair for the year 2020, and I so move.
Second?
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Manager, I guess to you, with, I know, our vigilance in terms of making sure things are properly assessed throughout the township, how have our appeals looked over the last number of years in terms of the work that's had to be done?
Our tax appeals have consistently gone down. However, we used to employ 2 firms to handle our tax appeal work. This year, we're only really assigning the lion's share of the work to the one firm, Mr. Bernstein's firm, in addition to the McElroy firm, I believe?
No, and also to DeFrancesco.
Okay, DeFrancesco abatement.
We balance these cases among firms depending on various factors, what they have. So, I mean, basically, if you don't mind,
No,
I'll just
no.
say, yes, the total number of cases has gone down. Occasionally, at certain points, they spike up. But what's been happening is that these firms have been doing a really excellent job of trying to tackle these long-term situations where we have, 7 or 8 years, 5 or 6 years of actual tax appeals, for instance, in big commercial tax. I don't want to name particular cases, but what they've been able to do is settle these cases so that there's no back refunds, which is what really hurts the finances. So we've been able to pretty much dismiss the older cases and work going forward. So they've done an excellent job, and I keep an eye on it. George really is the prime monitor of what these firms do, and he's satisfied with this firm and the work that they've been doing. And so we are always adjusting the amounts of not to exceed for each firm.
And more to the work of the firms, which I'm sure is excellent, are we seeing, as you were kind of getting to, Mr. Stafford, a reduction in the number of appeals due to the nature of us staying on top of the values of the properties?
Yes, in addition to the thorough assessing of Mr. Labrizzi.
That's what
Yeah,
really is key.
The partnership between the firms, but also our tax assessing team, is what results in a decrease. Because, like anything else, if you adopt such a strict, thorough process, folks know, if it's not a true appealable issue, you're not throwing something on the wall and hoping that it sticks.
I should say one more thing, which is that all of the county tax appeals, which is the first line of appeals, are still handled in-house. We handle those. So we don't send those out to law firms.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos to George Labrizzi.
Absolutely.
He does excellent work.
Counselor Baskerville?
Yes.
Counselor Hurlock?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McMahon?
Yes.
Counselor Russo?
Yes.
Counselor Schlager?
Yes.
Counselor Spiller?
Yes.
Mayor Jackson?
Yes. Item C is a resolution approving memorandums of agreement between the Township of Montclair and the Communication Workers of America Local 1040 Supervisory Bargaining Unit, and with the Communication Workers of America Non-Supervisory Bargaining Unit, and authorizing the township manager to execute the collective negotiation agreements to be written based upon the terms therein. I so move.
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Stafford?
Yes, Mayor. Mayor.
Certainly. Yes, Councilor Russo.
Hello.
Yes, Councilor Russo, please.
Councilor Russo. Yeah, I just want to say that, as I say with every one of these contracts, the manager and staff and the team has done a great job. I never saw this anywhere in the state of New Jersey with 6 and 7, 8-year contracts. Long-term contracts like this with our employees create stability and continuity and predictability in our finances and are good for the taxpayers, the employees, and the township. So I really congratulate you and thank you for this work, and I thank our employees for agreeing to these longer-term contracts, which I think are very good for Montclair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Stafford, comment?
There's not really much more to say than what Councilor Russo said, Mayor. I will echo the gentleman's sentiments. They are both for 7-year terms, which is consistent with what we've been doing in the very recent past. And they're fair, square deals for both parties. What I would say is, assuming the governing body passes item C, the resolution in item C, the next thing you'll see, I believe, notwithstanding the COVID-19 crisis and the fact that all employees are completely immersed in dealing with, would be the 2 salary ordinances. I'm going to work very hard to have that on your agenda for 2 weeks from tonight for introduction, the corresponding salary guides, which would, of course, be pursuant to tonight.
Thank you. And so that would be 6 down, 2 to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Great work. Congratulations.
Counselor Baskerville?
Yes.
Counselor Hurlock?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McMahon?
Yes.
Counselor Russo?
Yes.
Counselor Schlager?
Yes.
Counselor Spiller?
Yes.
Mayor Jackson?
Yes. Item D is a resolution concerning reimbursement of credit card, debit card, and e-check fees on certain property tax and utility charge payments. And I so move.
Second.
Second.
Is there discussion? Mr. Stafford or Ms. Rao, either one, comment on this one?
I'd be happy to,
Sure.
Mayor. On March 24th of this year, the governing body passed Resolution R20-068, encouraging residents and taxpayers to make payments of taxes and utility charges by electronic means, including by debit cards, credit cards, and e-checks. That resolution provided for the processing costs associated with such transactions to be reimbursed to the taxpayer or ratepayer by means of a credit on future tax or utility bills. This item, item D, is a resolution that would continue that reimbursement of credit card and debit card fees on property tax and utility charge payments through 4 p.m. on Monday, May 11, 2020.
Thank you. Council, questions, comment?
I just have a question, please, Mayor. I'm trying to find out, it says after that time, the fees will no longer be reimbursed.
Correct.
And can you just explain, please, why we decided to get to this point?
In short, it's an enticement to have folks who are able to pay before the extension of the grace period, pay and have their fees, if they pay electronically, even by debit or credit card fees, debit or credit cards, reimbursed. If they pay after, they would not be, unless they pay by e-check, at which
Okay.
point they would be reimbursed. So they
So
still
they're
have a
reimbursed,
possibility,
okay,
but not for debit or credit, which costs the town a significant
Okay.
amount of money.
okay.
And all not charged interest until...
Oh, no interest.
None
No,
of
this
them
is
are
just the
charged
fee
interest.
for using a
Okay.
credit card or a debit
Got
card
it.
to pay one's taxes.
Okay.
But if one uses an e-check, same status quo.
Good, okay, thank you.
You bet.
Counselor Baskerville?
Yes.
Counselor Hurlock?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McMahon?
Yes.
Counselor Russo?
Yes.
Counselor Schlager?
Yes.
Counselor Spiller?
Yes.
Mayor Jackson?
Yes. Item E is a resolution urging a halt to the use of leaf blowers in the Township of Montclair during the COVID-19 health crisis. I'm not going to move that, so if somebody else
I'll
wants
move
to.
it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll speak to this only in that I asked for it to be placed here along with Councilwoman Schlager and Councilman Russo. But one of the things that I think was key, we've been hearing from a number of residents, and primarily around the fact that a number of individuals are home, of course, remote learning or teaching, or remote working if possible, and hopefully still employed, but we know there's so many who are suffering even with that. But that said, as we are all at home and we hear the noise each and every day, it is something that is a challenge as people try and do their work. However, also being equally mindful of the fact that due to the governor's executive order, there is absolutely nothing that can be further banned that he has not already done so. So this mayor is just to strike that balance, which is to recommend to anyone who is potentially about to use a leaf blower that they consider not and try and use it as infrequently as possible where able. So again, to what the mayor did in one of the last ones, I'll just read the resolved part. The Township of Montclair does hereby urge landscapers and residents to limit as much as possible the use of leaf blowers and other loud machines that generate particulate matter pollution during the current emergency, consistent with safe practices and restrictions imposed by the crisis, including wearing face masks and further, that the township disseminate this information. So with that, Mayor, that was the thinking behind this, to try and strike that balance. Again, not an imposition because we know that legally we cannot, but just a recommendation of if you can limit it in the way while people are stuck at home and trying to do work and trying to learn, it's appreciated, if you will. And certainly any of my colleagues who also helped me craft this language can speak to it as well. So thank you.
Thank you,
Councilor
Mr. Mayor.
Baskerville?
Yes, I'd like to thank my council colleagues for getting on board with this about 2 weeks ago. I was trying to get this on the agenda, and that's when we were told that it was illegal. And so I'm happy now that we have something that will satisfy the law, that is not telling people what to do, but it does give them an option, because certainly this is something that near and dear to my heart as I watch young people in particular and seniors that have medical conditions that are exacerbated by this type of thing, and the intrusion of the noise while people are at home is also a concern. And so I'm glad that we came together and in this understanding of this.
Any other council?
Mayor?
Yes. Yes, Councilor
Yes,
Russo.
Mayor Bob Russo. I just like to say, I'm teaching remotely from home, as many teachers are doing. And by the way, it's Teacher Appreciation Week. So we ought to appreciate teachers trying to teach from home. And these gas-powered leaf blowers are just a terrible, terrible imposition on so many of us trying to teach from home. So I hope that the folks who use them will actually curtail use at this time, especially during the pandemic, while people are home trying to work and teach and learn. And also that people shift to electric blowers when they can. We phase out these gas blowers that are so bad, get electric blowers, and also maybe try to get back to raking when you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comment?
Yeah, it's Deputy Mayor McMahon. As that gentleman who came before us many times, the landscaper representative, our town workers use these. I use these. I have to landscape my own place. I understand the issues, if you will, but I think it's kind of a little bit overwrought, and so I'm going to be abstaining on this one. I think there's probably a happy medium, but stopping them is not.
Any
That's all I
other,
have.
any other council comment?
Just a note on that, Mayor, that this does not stop them, just to be
Yeah,
clear.
yeah,
for-
right.
okay.
This doesn't, it doesn't stop them, it's just a request. I would join with Deputy Mayor McMahon. I'm really kind of vacillating between voting no and abstaining. I've, talked to health officers among other Essex County towns, and have not heard any conversation or any objection to the fact that the leaf blowing actually creates any issues with respect to health. That's why I think we're not seeing, there are some towns that already had the ban, but that I've not seen any towns that have instituted a ban or this kind of thing in other towns where it's not prohibited. Also, too, I think, in my opinion, I think this is, and again, I hasten to add, I won't be here when this goes on, but I think it's a first step toward trying to basically ban leaf blowers. And I believe that perhaps the unintended consequence of that is the employment of those individuals who are employed by the landscape companies, for whom, getting to a job and getting it done and quickly and moving on to the next one is how they make money, how they feed their families. And to me, this is going that route will then make it more likely that some of those people are going to lose their jobs. And while I understand that people who perhaps, go to, I know we have the teachers, of course, and I understand that, but we have a lot of people who go to very high-paying jobs in the city and Newark and other places like that, who are home, unfortunately home now, but when, God willing, life returns to normal, they're going to be going back to their places of employment and not worrying about who's blowing a leaf blower or anything else. And the poor guy who now is out of work is out of work. And so to me, I think it's a slippery slope. So I have real reservations about this, not for those reasons. So anyway, we'll call the roll, and I'll figure out how I'm going to vote by the time it gets to me. Madam Clerk.
Counselor Baskerville?
Yes.
Counselor Hurlock?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McMahon?
Sound cut out.
You said the sound cut out, I think.
Oh. Deputy Mayor McMahon?
Abstain.
Counselor Russo?
Yes.
Counselor Schlager?
Yes.
Counselor Spiller?
Yes.
Mayor Jackson?
Abstain. Bill resolution, Counselor Slager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Whereas invoices against the Township of Montclair in favor of the following persons for the amount set opposite their respective names have been received, duly audited, and found correct. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the Township of Montclair in the County of Essex that said invoices be and they are hereby ordered paid, and that checks be drawn by the Finance Department to the order of such persons for the amount respectively and hereinafter stated on the computer printout attached hereto and made a part hereof. This bill list is dated May 5th, 2020, for the amount of $11,030,143.86, and I so move.
I'll second. Questions, comments? Roll call.
Counselor Baskerville?
Yes.
Counselor Hurlock?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McMahon?
Yes.
Counselor Russo?
Yes.
Counselor Schlager?
Yes.
Counselor Spiller?
Yes.
Mayor Jackson?
Yes. Mr. Stafford?
Thank you, Mayor. Item number one, on April 23 of 2019, following an appropriate request for proposals process, the township led a contract with Richview Consulting to provide arborist consulting services. That contract was for a one-year period with options for the township to renew for 2 one-year periods. And this item is a resolution that would, based upon the excellent service provided by the vendor, exercise the township's first option and extend the contract for a one-year term in an amount not to exceed $79,872. On June 25th of 2019, following an appropriate request for proposals process, the township led a contract with Neglia Engineering Associates to provide engineering consulting services for a one-year period. Given the significant increase in engineering services demands over the last 9 months, the not-to-exceed limit on the aforementioned contract will be exceeded. Therefore, item number 2 is a resolution that would authorize the upward amending of that contract by an amount of $50,000.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Stafford, for those 2 items, I guess 1 and 2, I guess let's work backwards. For number 2, I know part of the work here was going to be an assessment at, periodic, of course, periods of time, but every year certainly, and then I think a check-in, maybe 3 years from when we initially did this, to see if it was still cost-effective to be doing it this way. As we see the not-to-exceed number rising in this instance, one of the concerns was around previously when we had an in-house person, obviously you can engage them much more easily as the general costs that are associated with that go. As we see this start to tick up, are you guys still tracking this, and we still looking at this to see where those dollars land in terms of cost effectiveness, also the ability of the individual to be here as much as we need it as a council or residents? How's that going in your assessment to date, and when's the official check-in that we'd like to say, look, it's now been 3 years since whatever period of time since the elimination in-house? What is that looking like? Is this the firm? Is there another firm? Or is it where we should be bringing this back in? How's that coming?
The review is going fabulous. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it, in the 5.5 years that I've been working with the township, when I first started, we had an engineer and an engineering supervisor. Those 2 employees' salary and benefits alone were more than the worth of this contract, even with the upward amendment. And that doesn't include every capital project that we have and the consulting service engineers that we retained for those beyond this. We are well below the economics of before we retained this firm. With respect to availability, I'm thoroughly satisfied. I believe the council people who have dealt with the firm would say the same. I know the finance committee, who, under normal circumstances, when we have physical meetings and the engineering firm representatives are in the building, would say the same thing. And I would say last year when we went out for an RFP, I believe 6 firms responded. This was far and away the best possible choice for the township.
Great, thank you.
Here, I echo Mr. Stafford.
Thank you. Moving back to just number 1, along the same lines, I know specifically, and probably why I'm asking a little about it with number 2, being the liaison, one of the liaisons to the Environmental Commission, and the interaction that we sometimes see, specifically with the arborist more so. How has that come along with in terms of the amount of time that we need here, in terms of the ability to review the tree ordinance and some other issues that hadn't really been looked at for quite some time or, enforced in that way? What are you seeing in terms of use around that?
Again, I would say the same thing. We've suffered no issues with respect to availability. We've enjoyed excellent service from the vendor, and although I can't recall off the top of my head how many respondents we received for the RFP more than a year ago, I can tell you that our experience over the last 12 months has been exemplary.
Excellent. I know the RFP, when we put it out, said that we would be able to, the person, whoever replied, had to be able to meet demand if we had to increase the number of days and other pieces. So I assume that's still in place, obviously.
Yes, sir. That was one of the strict points, yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor
Mr. Mayor,
Brasfield.
Thank you, sir. So I'd just like to comment with regard to number 2 and the resolution for the Bernstein Associates. I certainly think that they have done a fine job when I'm able to get them, but my preference, as I thought it would be, continues to be where we retain one individual, identify, or as you said, we had 2 individuals in-house to perform the engineering tasks. For me, it was much easier to get a rapid response. I knew, where they were. It seemed like they were more on top of all of the different types of engineering things that were going on in the township versus, going to one person for this type of engineering matter, another person for that type of engineering matter. So my preference remains to be, having a individual person or 2 individuals, as you discussed. Can you, you mentioned that the salaries for the engineer, I guess, and the associate was well above this. Can you give us some idea how much above this?
Well, the salary for the township engineer in the current day would be $132,000, and benefits would approximate $50,000. The salary for the engineering supervisor would be approximately $110,000, and the benefits would be approximately $44,000. And before I got here, within the last 10 years, we had 2 junior engineers or engineering aides whose salaries and benefits totaled about $257,000. So all in, for those 4 employees in the last 10 years, you're looking at well over $500,000. And that, again, does not include the township retaining engineering consulting firms for just about every capital project, which is what was done when we had in-house staff. Mm-hmm. I'm thoroughly surprised to hear that you have suffered issues or negative issues with respect to contact or dealings or what have you. And I would suggest that in the future, if you have any engineering needs, please come to Mr. Scantlebury or to me electronically. We'll get them in the hands of Mr. Hernandez, who is exceptionally responsive.
Mm-hmm. And I wasn't saying that it was necessarily negative. It's just more difficult, first of all, for me to, get that person, and then to understand. So like at certain meetings, you have one person, and then the incident that I can remember is at one of the meetings, it was a wrong engineer that showed up. So we had to get the right engineer there. And so there were just some flaws, and I guess if this is the route that we're going to continue to go along, we just have to iron those out.
Thank you. Mr. Stafford.
Thank you, sir. Items 3, 4, and 5 are grant insertion items, and each item would serve as the township's request to the State of New Jersey Director of the Division of Local Government Services to approve the insertion of the listed 2020 or 2020 and 21 grants as items of revenue in the township's 2020 and 2021 budgets and as appropriations in the same amount. Item number 3 is a 2020/21 recycling grant in the amount of $39,830.85. Item number 4 is a 2020-2021 FAMTAS grant in the amount of $18,000. And item number 5 is a 2020 Comcast grant in the amount of $5,000. And none of these grants require additional funds toward local match. Regarding item number 6, certain capital improvement appropriation balances are no longer necessary to fund the applicable projects now completed. Accordingly, the Chief Financial Officer has certified that it is necessary to cancel said balances so that the unexpended balances may be returned to either the Capital Improvement Fund or other accounts as required by law, and this item is the resolution that would authorize same. Next, in the 2020 operating budget, this governing body allocated funds to provide for various capital enhancements to our water, sewer, and parking utilities. Items 7, 8, and 9 are the fully funded ordinances that will facilitate the spending of those allocated funds. Item 7 is a fully funded capital ordinance providing the parking utility with $700,000 in the aggregate for paving and striping of various parking lots, refurbishing of parking decks, security cameras and emergency call stations, and license plate recognition software and hardware. Item number 8 is a fully funded capital ordinance providing the sewer utility with $1,025,000 in the aggregate for rehabilitation and maintenance of the Skytop Station pump, refurbishing of sewer slip lining to eliminate infiltration from the sanitary system, and 2 pickup trucks. And item number 9 is a fully funded capital ordinance providing the water utility with $1 million in the aggregate for miscellaneous repairs to approximately 1 mile of 8-inch and 12-inch water main lines, pumping stations, control systems, meter reading systems, and security items, well site improvement repairs, replacement of vehicles that have outlived their useful life, and refurbishment of vehicles that have useful life remaining but need repair. And again, you've heard me use the words fully funded many times. Given that these 3 ordinances are fully funded, they do not add to the township's debt.
If I may, Mr. Stafford, which I just want to comment that this $2.6 million that we are spending on improvements to our parking utilities or lots without borrowing a dime. That's because we've generated surpluses. We have the cash sitting there. How important that is in terms of our financial stability, while at the same time making the necessary payments to the county and to the Board of Education in this environment is phenomenal. It's really phenomenal.
It's,
So
it's further to what Mr. Spiller said before. It's
just-
not planning in the last 2 or 3 or 4 weeks for these rainy days, as the governor and as Mr. McMahon said. It's Ms. Rouse, Mr. Benecke's, the finance committees, the governing bodies planning over the last 8 years to get us to this point where we are appropriately positioned. We're not wonderfully positioned,
Correct,
given
correct.
the crisis, but compared to other municipalities, similarly situated in others, we are doing fine.
I just want to commend you and commend Ms. Rao and Mr. Benecke for for helping us to get there. It's really impressive. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to agree with you, and I commend the people that you identified, and I'm also very grateful for your leadership with regard to this, because even in the first 4 years of our tenure together, when I was on the Finance Committee, you were always, there and assisting us with
Thank
making
you.
these difficult decisions. And I think, by and large, a lot of this financial stability, certainly Maja and the Finance Committee, but I think,
Thank you very much,
yeah,
Councilor
thank you,
Bassler.
sir.
I appreciate that.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Item 10 would be a bond ordinance providing for the various listed Board of Educational capital improvements, authorizing the issuance of $167,900 in bonds or notes of the township to finance part of the cost thereof. Similarly, item number 11 would be a bond ordinance, also providing for various listed Board of Education capital improvements, authorizing the issuance of $393,276 in bonds or notes of the township to finance the part of the cost thereof. Lastly, for me, Mayor, item number 12 would be a bond ordinance providing for the various listed township capital improvements, authorizing the issuance of $2,074,800 in bonds or notes of the township to finance part of the cost thereof. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions on these items for Mr. Stafford or Ms. Rao? Thank you. Discussion on the moratorium on rent increases. I don't know who wants to lead the discussion, but
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. So as is listed on here, the moratorium on rent increases. First, I want to thank Mr. Karasik for looking into this in a few different towns, Mr. Mayor, to see what's been happening, what's been going on. We all know the devastating impact that this virus is having, the instability that it's causing. Certainly, now's the time to look at what we can do in terms of security for people, housing security being one of the main pieces. So this looks at, which we heard discussed, not by us, but by many of the landlords actually at the rent control discussion about freezing rents, so nobody saw an increase. What this moratorium would do is freeze rents for a 3-month period. At that time, rents obviously could be increased after that, but it would ask that would mandate that there's a 3-month rent freeze to allow people to not have that fear as they move forward. The specifics of which, Mr. Krasik, I'd like you to just read out so everybody's aware of what we've been discussing at this point, but if you can start with that, and then I know a couple of my colleagues who have been also supporters of this would like to speak to it as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, there've been, I did look into both the legality and propriety of a rent freeze, and essentially it's, I think the municipal power can extend that far. There is no, there's one other town, Hoboken, that actually has adopted a rent freeze for 3 months. And
Just so we all know what we're speaking to, can you read the language to the one that we have there, please?
yeah, sure. I just wanted to explain that I do think that the township's authority can extend this into this, to do this. Well, I have drafted a basic simple freeze which would apply to, first of all, it's an ordinance. It would have to be an ordinance, not a resolution. And the first issue is to whom would it apply, and that would be basically, we would leave out owner-occupied properties which had one rental unit, like an owner who rents out a unit. But other than that, it would cover all rental units in town, other than units that are.
Question, would it be a different cohort than covered by the rent control ordinance?
Yeah, it would be more units than the rent control. The rent control ordinance, the way it was written, was, with 4 units, 4 units and up. This would be the only exemption would be owner occupied with 1 rental unit in addition to the owner. And of course, units that are exempt by federal law or state law, because some units are exempt from rent regulation if they were built recent construction, and units in which the rent is determined by the income of the household, which are subsidized units, they wouldn't be included. And hotels aren't included, obviously. But essentially, there would be no rent increases permitted, with a broad definition of rent to include all kinds of charges that somebody might levy against the tenant, landlord might levy against the tenant, and including things like parking and use of pets, et cetera. And the idea would be that it would be for 3 months, depending on when it's introduced, the dates. It would be retroactive to. Would like to make it retroactive to May 1st. As I say, it depends on what would be introduced and adopted, but it would be a 3-month period. those are the terms that we
A
were discussing.
couple questions. If it's retroactive to May
Right.
1st, so I would get a credit against my rent? How would that work? Because the
Right.
law wouldn't take effect until end of June, let's say, mid to end of June.
Right, that's
end of
why
June.
I hesitated on exactly when it'd be retroactive to. It kind of depends on when it's actually introduced.
If we had been able to get this done, Mayor, this month, I think that makes sense, which is obviously what we were working on, is discussing it, but obviously wanted to bring it to this body for discussion first. So again, those dates can be flexible. We know that the mortgage forbearance plans that exist right now have a 3-month period, which is a little bit of where we married this with,
Right.
for that. We also know that that 3-month period actually is flexible and can start later or earlier. So exactly when the 3 months are, I think is a little flexible, but again, the sooner we capture it, the better, I think, to freeze. That's
So
the point.
I guess my question is, if I've already paid the rent for that month, I would get a credit going forward? Is that the idea?
I think what Mr. Kresick was saying, if we get this in place actually next month, we'd probably say that month would be the freeze.
Right. There's a
So,
few,
okay.
So then there
the
wouldn't
date
be,
whenever
because it
there
would be,
be no.
yeah,
there would be
then
no
it wouldn't be, right,
nothing.
yeah.
right.
Other question I have, let's say I have 2 months left on my lease, and the rent is frozen for 3 months. My lease is over, so the first, and let's say I'm going to re-up with my landlord, so the first month of that rent is?
Would be
what
the
have to
frozen
be
rent
the
amount.
first Of that.
And
Because.
that would be the only one that would matter, Mayor, because if they're currently in that lease, right, they're not going to go up, like if I'm locked in 2
Right,
more
right,
months of
right,
the
right,
lease,
right.
it's not going up anyway.
Correct.
The whole point is that next 1 month,
Right.
so it's
Right.
not as if this is like a ton of, everyone's month, their lease has to be expiring now, it has, there's a few things that have to be happening,
Right.
but it's exactly to that point.
Right, okay.
And
Thank
then not in perpetuity, just for a month, 2 months, depending on
Right.
when that expiration occurs.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions, if I may. The first is, how would this be enforced? And the second is, would not the landlords join this into the lawsuit and stop it, and join it right up front?
Well, the landlord could certainly.
You know what I'm saying?
Landlords could certainly take it to court if they wanted. I don't think it would be joined to the rent control lawsuit, because they're really completely independent. They may be looking at the same issue, but they're completely independent items.
So back to the first question, how would it be enforced?
Would have to be enforced if somebody, hasn't been thoroughly worked through, but if somebody filed a complaint that their rent was increased contrary to the ordinance, then the township would have to act and issue a summons of some kind. We have to work it out, but basically, there would be a summons issued, and then the matter would be adjudicated.
So you would get a summons, and you would have to go to the municipal court?
I believe so, yes.
But you're still working that out?
Yes,
Trying to-
correct.
Well, this is just discussion.
No, no, I
right?
understand. Yeah,
This
yeah,
is just
yeah, yeah,
discussion
I
to
understand.
hopefully see if people are supportive. And certainly, the task would then be to charge Mr. Karasik and staff to put those details, all fair points. And I'll just note to Councilman McMahon's point that certainly it would be a little bit ironic in that many of the landlords that came forward were talking about a voluntary rent freeze of their own. So if they chose to bring forward litigation around this one for the very thing they said they would do on their own, certainly free to, of course, but.
Can I say something?
Of course.
Yeah. This is a period that's very difficult now. It's the kind of thing we're doing in an emergency, sort of. A lot of people wanted our rent control ordinance to take effect immediately, and we didn't do that. This rent freeze, and I think it's called more so a moratorium, would simply keep rents at the level they're at, and they would not increase for 3 months. That's what I understand. Moratorium means there's a moratorium on any increase. So that's the common term used as a freeze. It's really a moratorium on any increases going forward for 3 months. That's what it does, Ira?
That's correct. It's not a scenario where you're telling people they don't have to pay rent for 3 months. It's just that an increase is stopped for the next 3 months. Because there are people who
So
are
if your rent
actually,
was if your rent was $2,000 May 1st, you would keep it at that level June 1st, July 1st.
if that's the
Right, well,
starting
that's
date,
what you
yes.
said.
And that's, Mr. Russo, that's what we're discussing, right? We think all likely to the mayor's first point that it probably is 1 month after what you just discussed because of how quickly we could implement to not be retroactive. But ideally, yes, that scenario you just described.
Yeah, Councilor Bassel?
So if we could do anything tonight, it wouldn't take effect for how long, Ira? I would like to know how long it takes to get an ordinance passed, and then finally a hearing, and then, I guess, second reading. What's the time frame of that?
Well, the typical time frame for an ordinance is if it's introduced at a meeting, then the public hearing is held at the second meeting after that. So, if it was introduced tonight, but you don't have it in front of you, if it was introduced tonight, it would be then heard at the first meeting in June. That would be the quickest schedule that we could put it on.
So then, as to the mayor's point, it wouldn't even be adopted till after June 1st.
Well, adopted and then also when you have the 20 days.
Unless
We do
Right.
an
We
we did an
emergency.
emergency
Yeah,
resolution,
yeah,
Right.
we could do an emergency.
which would be appropriate with that type of ordinance.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Bassel, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so I'd just like to thank Mr. Scott and the Montclair NAACP Housing Commission for doing a lot of research and sending us information and requesting that the council look at this. And I'm really glad that I continue to be a very active member on the Montclair NAACP Housing Commission. I'd like to thank Mr. Khan for also assisting, us as we looked at different ordinances from municipalities in the near area. And I'm very much in favor of this. I would like to thank our attorney Karasik for your work on this. And hopefully we'll be able to get this passed, and hopefully we will be able to pass an emergency so that we can have it start immediately rather than to wait for the period of 20 days. So I'm excited about the possibility that we may pass this.
Any other comments or questions? So if I'm hearing correctly, Mr. Grassick, you would have a copy of, a draft of this for our next meeting, or the?
Well, I do have a draft prepared. It hasn't been distributed to the council.
Okay.
I mean, the council, I could read it and the council could act. I think that'd be a little bit precipitous.
I think so. But
Yeah.
I'm abstaining, so
He doesn't have copies of it?
I don't have it.
No.
Mr. Karasik, so to be clear, can it or can it not be introduced tonight?
It has to, legally, it hasn't been the answer is legally it can be introduced if a written copy is distributed to the council members, or a copy is read since two council members or several are online. We did introduce the rent control ordinance in the same fashion, although the rent control ordinance had been distributed prior to the meeting. So if the council wants to go to introduce it, I could read the ordinance. And it would, I believe, legally stand up. Of course, it could be challenged.
Well, maybe we could start by my first request, which was, can you please read the ordinance so all my colleagues can hear it, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
An ordinance imposing a temporary moratorium on rent increases during COVID-19 pandemic state of emergency. Whereas pursuant to NJSA 40:48-2, a municipality may adopt ordinances not contrary to the laws of this state or of the United States as it may deem necessary and proper for order and protection of persons and property. and for the preservation of the public health, safety, and welfare of the municipality and inhabitants. Whereas the governor of the state of New Jersey declared a public health emergency and state of emergency in the state of New Jersey on March 9th, 2020 due to the spread of COVID-19, whereas the Office of Emergency Management of the Township of Montclair declared a state of emergency in the township on March 15th, 2020, whereas many citizens of New Jersey and the township are or will be experiencing substantial loss of income as a result of business closures, reductions in hours, or layoffs related to COVID-19, impeding their ability to keep current on rent and mortgage payments. And whereas housing security and stability are important to public health, particularly as homelessness can increase vulnerability to COVID-19. And whereas removals of residents pursuant to evictions or foreclosure proceedings can increase the risk to those residents of contracting COVID-19, which in turn increases the risks to the rest of society and endangers public health. Whereas in recognition of this danger, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac announced the suspension of all evictions and foreclosures for 60 days, whereas on March 19th, Governor Murphy signed the residential eviction foreclosure moratorium legislation into law to protect New Jersey residents at this critical time. Whereas the adverse economic impacts of COVID-19 are significant, pose a growing threat to the housing security of many New Jersey residents. And whereas the township has adopted a comprehensive program of rent stabilization, which was scheduled to go into effect on April 27th, but has been temporarily stayed by the Superior Court. And whereas in light of the ongoing financial hardships, the severe disruption to the economy at all levels, moratorium on the execution of warrants of eviction and injunction tolling the effective date of the rent control ordinance, Township has determined that the immediate stability of rents is necessary in the public interest and is best served by placing an immediate temporary moratorium on all rent increases. Now, therefore, the Township Council, Township of Montclair, hereby ordains as follows. A moratorium is hereby declared to prevent any increase in the amount paid in rent or any additional charges whatsoever by residential tenants in all residential rental units in the Township of Montclair, with the exception of rental units in properties that are owner-occupied with no more than one additional rental unit, rental units in properties exempt from local rent regulation by state or federal law, rental units in which the rent is determined as a function of household income, and rental units in hotels. B, during the period the moratorium is in effect, no rent shall be increased as to any property covered by this ordinance, where rent is defined for purposes or ordinance as any price for the use of residential rental space, no matter how set forth, including amounts paid by the tenant for use of any service in connection with tenancy. Additionally, no other charge associated with the rental of a property covered by this ordinance, including but not limited charges for parking, pets, or the use of furniture, shall be increased during this time. This moratorium shall be made retroactive to, and the date here is May 1st, 2020, shall remain in effect till August 1st, 2020. That's what's written.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Council President.
Thank you. And so I'd just like to say that if we are able to vote on this tonight, I'm definitely going to vote in favor of it. I'm in favor of it, but I'm really disappointed because about 2 weeks ago now, the Montclair NAACP sent to all of us and asked us to pass an ordinance to do this, and I don't know how many of my colleagues responded. I certainly did immediately, and then I sent out to my colleagues that I would, be interested, can I get a second, and I didn't hear from anyone. Why I'm disappointed is now, so 2 weeks later, now the night of, we're getting an ordinance that I've never seen, and it's pretty lengthy, and I'd like, if we're gonna vote on it, I'd like to have somebody go and run off a copy so that I can read it. But I'm also disappointed because when the people that were opposed to the rent control ordinance came out and they started saying that it was wrong because they didn't know anything about it, we didn't hear. At that time, I was totally opposed to what they were saying because I know exactly how many meetings I hosted for rent control and the duration of time that we had been having meetings so that everyone could be heard and have a voice on the rent control ordinance. And so I didn't stand with them in their concerns at that time. But if I was not in favor of this ordinance tonight, I would be disappointed because we haven't heard from any of the people that may want to give us all the reasons why, like the landlords, and we haven't had an opportunity to look at this. And so we have to do better as a council in terms of these things that are extremely important. There's no reason why, if we got information that we should be doing this 2 weeks ago, we're sitting here now. And I don't know whoever else may not have seen it, but I certainly have not seen it. And so it's disappointing, and we've got to do better.
Mr. Mayor? So to that point, for all those who are listening, unfortunately, and part of the challenge with this is that we legally are not permitted to discuss these items amongst ourselves and come up with a formulated plan. So as we know has been the practice here, we have to add an item for discussion. Now, certainly this item, which I asked for to be added, Mr. Mayor, for discussion, for these exact purposes, to flesh it out, figure out what enforcement issues, other questions. However, given the unbelievably dire situation that many individuals find themselves in, certainly, as we just heard from Mr. Karasik, we are all discussing the unprecedented steps of just moving it and taking action, which we know we normally do not. We discuss these items as are on here for discussion so that all those items that were just mentioned by Councilman Baskerville can happen. There can be a robust discussion. We can have people out at the next meeting. We can hear pro, con. That is the process, and that's the first step in that discussion, is to get it on the agenda, which I'm happy we're able to do for that discussion purposes. But if we choose to act more rapidly, if we choose to protect those rents quicker, it does then mean that we will circumvent the usual process that we have, and it means we'll act sooner. So certainly I think that's the purpose of this discussion tonight, Mr. Mayor, certainly why I've introduced it, to have us discuss it through the normal channels, or if we feel that it is urgent and we need to act, then we would need to do so. But certainly, as we know, given our type of government, we are not able to all talk about and consider this beforehand. We do have to wait till a meeting to legally have these conversations, and I'm happy to be able to have done it at the first meeting since it was brought to our attention. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor? Yes, and so in terms of protocol and that which is the norm, we're supposed to have our agenda items on the agenda for us to review by Friday. And now today is Tuesday. And so, again, this is a little bit different. I'm certainly aware of the fact that, there are urgent matters. I'm just a little concerned that we didn't move more quickly on this, and we could have had this, out much more quickly. So I'm not, I'm aware of what the laws say. I'm also aware that we're supposed to be having our agenda items out Friday so that people that want to ask questions, people that want to call in and be a part of the discussions can do so. All of that said, certainly I believe and I know that this is an urgent matter. That's why I immediately 2 weeks ago responded that yes, and asked for a second. And since I did not hear from any colleagues, I was not aware. I'm very happy that it's here, but I'm just saying the procedure, we need to do better with the procedure, because it does then appear as though people are trying to not give people an opportunity to participate or even know that it's going to be on the agenda. But I am very much, as I was 2 weeks ago when the Montclair NAACP asked this of us, in favor of supporting this tonight. I'm very much in favor, as I was when I tried to get council support for an emergency vote after we passed the rent stabilization. So I certainly understand the urgency. I'm just saying that we have to do better.
Just from a process piece, maybe Mr. Stafford, you could speak to it, but I'm looking at my Friday agenda, which has this item listed. Was this listed on everyone's Friday agenda, or maybe it was left off of one person's?
I didn't get
I have
it.
no
Did
reason
you?
to think that it was left off of anybody's agenda. It was listed on the agenda on Friday
Thank you.
and online on Friday.
Okay,
That's
so
what
I
thought.
did
Thank
not
you.
get a copy at all.
Of the agenda?
I have it.
No, I did
Item
not
number
get a
13.
copy of the of the ordinance, I mean, or whatever
No,
we're
ma'am,
calling it.
there was no document associated
Right.
with the item, but the item was on the agenda.
Right, I see the line, but there was nothing to read, and it's extensive. And so I'm just saying that in the future, it would be better if we can get whatever it is, if we're going to have a discussion. Because just to say that, it doesn't really say, and then it seems as though maybe some of us, such as myself, might be in favor of voting on it tonight. So all I'm saying is, in the future, it would be much better if we can have it, along with the sentence that says discussion, so that, we'll know
Well,
what we're
candidly, that's up to
discussing.
the governing body as a
Right.
whole.
No, I know it is.
Over my
I'm-
tenure,
Right.
there have been multiple items that get listed without documents, so I took it in the normal course and put it on the agenda.
Absolutely, and I think, again, that's just another example, if you're saying there are many, that, there's room for improvement.
Okay, going forward, can I speak? It's Bob Russo.
Yes, Bob, you don't have to ask if you can speak. Every time you speak, you're entitled.
I knew it was on the agenda. I didn't talk to anybody about this, as we're not supposed to, but I just heard what Ira read. I agree with what Ira read. It reads okay to me, and I feel comfortable declaring it to be something that's an emergency, that we get it on the agenda now and reread it, have it moved and seconded, and get it then for the next meeting to have the public hearing for second reading. Because if we wait any longer, tenants are waiting and they need the help now with the COVID virus crisis. It's just that we're not talking about something in a vacuum. It's a crisis for tenants and people who are trying to survive this crisis.
And certainly, Mr. Russo, I
Can it
agree.
be moved? Can it be moved?
I agree, this is a crisis. I'll just note, we are taking actions for homeowners by deferring that tax payment, Mayor. We're taking action, hopefully, to help renters. We're taking action, across the board to make sure we try and help everyone. I think this is along those lines. And again, though, defer to our consensus around if we are comfortable moving it at this point or not.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
can someone go and get copies of this so that we can have it?
I can go upstairs and make copies.
Thank you.
And you actually want me
Deputy Clerk,
to-
is that right?
To that point, Mayor, if we've been suffering a technical difficulty with respect to one of the governing body members being dropped off. We're trying to get him back on. Could we take a 5-minute recess for the retrieval of that document? And
Thank you.
that would allow Mr. Fan to get your colleague, back on the.
Sounds good.
dialogue.
I just
Thank you.
have one question
Thank you.
before, which are the dates. Shall we agree to be retroactive to May 1st, or since it wouldn't be adopted until something like June, I'm not sure when our first meeting in June is. Should that be June 1st?
June 9. The meeting is June 9, I should say.
So I'm asking, really.
Well, if it's introduced.
Well, when you say retroactive, you mean whatever the rent is May 1st, that's what it becomes frozen as
Right, but then
June
it's...
1st.
No, I think you're saying two different things, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm saying is whatever the rent is on June 1st is what gets frozen, or as it reads now, May 1st. But I'm thinking that it wouldn't be adopted before June 9th. So the question is, do you want to go back that far? I just want to know before I print it out. And then the 3 months, if we move that date 1 month, we'd move till, from August, whatever, 1st to the beginning of September.
Right, I think the pros and cons of it, as I'm just assessing it quickly, I'm sure we all are, is that you lose 1 month transition there, Mayor. So somebody, you capture, but you do still capture the ones whose leases are expiring after that point. The challenge of it is retroactive enforcement, right, what that looks like. I think that was brought up by Councilman McMahon and alluded to by yourself, Mayor, of what that looks like. So Mr. Stafford, we'd have to find out from you, or Mr. Karasik, we'd have to find out from you or Mr. Stafford how hard it is to kind of do a retroactive piece if we got it, to say May 1st and it was in June, or
I think
or not.
I think it would be difficult to enforce if we're going back a month and a half, but that's, again, that's my feel, my opinion, just.
And just listening to it too, it seems to me that part of the rationale, and maybe this is looking at the whereas clauses, but it seems that part of the rationale was because of evictions and so forth. But those have been precluded by the governor's action, so I don't know that having that as a rationale for doing it is sustainable in the overall context, because you can't anyway. So,
Well, I just said there's a reason for that, and that's, although the governor's order stays warrants of execution. In other words, nobody can be thrown out of their apartment during the crisis. Eviction proceedings are still allowed to proceed, to go forward. So somebody could actually get, yes, that's how.
but I thought Judge Radner stopped all that. I thought that, I'm not mistaken, I think those hearings aren't even being held in Newark at all. My recollection is that Judge Radner stopped all that. There's nothing, none of that going on in Newark, I know that.
Well, I think you're right about the courts. I was thinking about the way the governor's order is written. The governor's order just stopped.
You know, again, I'm not, what I'm saying is, I think if you're going to list a rationale for doing something, if that rationale is moot, I think it weakens your ordinance, because you're saying I'm acting on something that's already been dealt with.
Okay.
I may be
know,
wrong in that regard, but of the actual whether or not it is, but it just seems to me, if I'm looking at it, maybe a judge or somebody's looking at it and saying, hey, wait, you guys did this to stop whatever.
That's well
and
taken.
it's-
That's a point well taken.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Mayor, some of it, and when we were even having some of our conversations, was to also highlight a lot of the great actions that people were taking, right? It notes in there, whereas the governor tried to stop this, whereas we're trying to stop evictions, whereas, you know, it's
Right.
kind of noting that whereas everyone's trying to do all these things, this is the next thing we're trying to do,
Right,
which is
right.
stop your rent from going up. I get what you're saying,
Yeah, or
that
maybe you
it,
couch it, like.
Yeah, maybe
saying
there's a
in
way
the
to
light
better
of-
word.
Of, you know, in the spirit of those things, or something along those lines, versus using it as a rationale
Fair
for
point,
doing it.
yeah.
You're saying, I want to be in the spirit of those things.
yes, that was the intent, so
Right.
appreciate that, Mayor.
Consistent
So if
with.
there's a- Yeah,
Right.
consistent with, maybe the
Right.
words like that.
Right.
I'll take a look what I can do right now. I'll see if I can capture the intent of what you
Yeah,
said.
maybe just a little
But
clause
we
in there
can-
that says something like that.
One thing we can do, since it is an ordinance, I mean, if we want to amend at least the whereases, we'll be able to do that before the at the public hearing, or by the public hearing. So we couldn't amend the dates. That's why I wanted to make sure we understood what the dates were going to be. But since, again, this is an ordinance and there's a public hearing, and the public will have ample opportunity to comment on it at that point. All right,
So-
well then, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we'll take a 5-minute recess. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Aye.
Aye.
You forgot permission to say aye. call the meeting back to order. I believe everyone has received, I know those of us here have hard copies. I believe those who are here participating remotely got email copies of the proposed ordinance. Any additional comments or?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So again, thank you to my colleagues, and as per the discussion item which was added, I appreciate the conversation that we're all having. I think great points that were raised. I think what is unique in this instance is right now is when people are facing the economic hardship. I couldn't be more proud of the work we're able to do in delaying those property tax payments today and the other actions that we've taken as a council. Given that, I think the language on this, and certainly the intent on this, Mayor, I think you raised some good points with some of the whereases, but the intent on this is around trying to hold those rents during this time. And again, it's for a very limited period. We talk about those 3 months, but it's a period I think that's going to be so important for individuals, renters, in that they're looking for that stability. Certainly, while I did add it for just discussion here, if there is the will of the body, and now everybody does have it in front of them, they can review it there. They see it's pretty straightforward in terms of what's called for. It's laid out there. It does include the retroactive to May 1st. And Mr. Karasik, I believe, and Madam Clerk, maybe you could help me with this, if we are able to move this tonight, and you use all the resources and tools at your disposal to publish this, is this something that we could introduce, have a second reading for at our next May meeting, and hopefully get this done in May?
Yes.
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 Okay,
I can
so,
move forward with that.
so I think that's a huge piece of this then, Mr. Karasik. If we're able to get this done in May, and it obviously is for May to be held at that rate, I think that gets us to where we want to be in this, and then hopefully as we all start to see that curve flattening us to come on the other side of this, that's when this, along with the mortgage forbearances and all the other plans that are out there, start to expire. But I think this is another example of us doing what we can. So in that light, Mr. Mayor, if there is a support for this, I would like to, as I moved it for discussion, I'd like to move this for introduction, and hopefully go from there. So I so move as is written.
Second.
I would like to second it. I would like to second it as written.
You're a little late.
Well, don't worry, Councilman Russo. In many of these meetings, we keep getting an echo on the phone anyway, so it sounds like you're right on par there. We got you. We noted that you're a big supporter of it, so thank you. And certainly anyone who wishes to speak to it.
Any other discussion?
Are we
I
talking
have a
about
question.
May 19th?
I'm sorry, I think I heard Councilor Russo. Did you have a question or
Are we
comment?
talking about May 19th?
Correct.
Yes.
May 19th is the next council meeting?
Second reading.
Yes, that would give us enough time as long as the publication
you.
could be accomplished.
Any other councilor comments?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Hurlock, I just have a quick question for Mr. Karasik.
Yes, sir.
If Mr. Karasik could just speak to this pending ordinance in light of the current litigation. I just want to hear your opinion on this, whether or not this will in any way conflict or interact in any way with the current litigation going on.
Well, I don't believe it should interact with it, other than the fact that they're both, addressing related issues. But part of one of the main arguments which brought on the current litigation was the issue of being able to have a referendum, and the governor has put that one to bed a little bit by changing the rules for referendum and allowing electronic submission. So I really do think this is a separate issue, and I don't believe they're at least legally connected.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Karasik. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Any other council comments or questions? Roll call?
Are they going to have a public? The public can't talk if they needed to.
Not at this time. They'd be able on the 19th.
On the 19th.
Yes. Madam Clerk?
Councilor Baskerville?
Yes.
Councilor Hurlock?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McMahon?
Could you come back to me? I'm still trying to read it.
Okay. Councilor Russo?
Yes, I support this enthusiastically.
Councilor Schlager?
Yes.
Counselor Spiller,
Yes.
Mayor Jackson.
Abstain?
Deputy Mayor McMahon,
I will also abstain.
okay.
Just want to thank my colleagues for considering it, Mayor, as part of the discussion item, and then moving it forward more rapidly. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Mayor,
Councilor
yes,
Basco?
and I'd just like to thank my council colleagues for getting on board with this. I'd like to thank the Interfaith Clergy Association and the Montclair NAACP who sent us similar language and a request that we, do this. And so I'd like to thank them for all of their hard work and along with Mr. Khan.
Thank you. We'll go to staff comments. Mr. Stafford?
Mayor, before you do, I think the gentleman spoke, Mr. Spiller spoke earlier about declaring an emergency in connection with this ordinance. Did you want that on for the May 19th agenda as well, assuming after public hearing and second reading, the item passes?
That would be the case. Do we need to do that now, Mr. Karasik, or is that something that is done then?
We would put it on the agenda, so I think the manager
You're
is
asking
I'm
just
just looking for
trying
guidance,
to.
yeah.
Yes,
I
please.
heard you say it earlier.
Yeah,
I just
yes.
want to make sure that you want it on the agenda.
Yes, that would be
Okay.
correct. Please, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stafford. Thank you, Mr. Karasik.
Staff comments?
Do we need a motion to do that?
No,
No.
not to put it on the agenda, no. Mr. Scantlebury?
No comments, Mayor.
Mr. Karasik?
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Rao, since you're here? Well, join the club. Mr. Fan, anything? Madam Clerk?
No.
Mr. Stafford?
I do, Mayor.
I bet.
Well, seriously, I'm very sad to have to relate that the most recent official reports include that the confirmed number of COVID-19 cases in Montclair as of this evening is 367, and that number includes 38 individuals who did not survive the illness. The best way to prevent the illness continues to be avoiding exposure to the virus. We must, as a community, continue to do everything we can to try and control community spread. Trips from home allowed by the governor's executive orders must comply with the directives therein, and when in public, individuals must practice social distancing. And social distancing, per the CDC, means keeping space between yourself and other people outside of your home at all times. This means stay at least 6 feet apart from other people and do not gather in groups. Follow the CDC guidelines by washing your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, especially after you've been in a public place or after blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing. Also, avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Vote by mail ballots were mailed by the Essex County Clerk's Office to Montclair voters on April 22nd. If one has not received a ballot in the mail by this time, one can request a replacement second ballot by visiting the Essex County Clerk's website at essexclerk.com and then by completing and submitting the necessary form found on the website's homepage. Questions can be directed to the Essex County Clerk at 973-621-4921 or by emailing info@essexclerk.com. By order of the Acting Administrative Director of the Courts, municipal court sessions statewide, including, of course, those of our municipal court, will resume effective Monday, May 11, 2020. With appropriate notice to parties, court sessions will resume then. Those sessions may only proceed by video or by phone. The order of the court declares specifically that parties, prosecutors, public defenders, even the judge, are not allowed to be in the court. Our municipal court personnel is accepting telephone calls for inquiries regarding court business. State, county, and township parks opened to the public this past Saturday with restrictions. For our township, this means that visitors to township parks may engage in some passive recreational activities such as hiking, biking, walking, running, and birding. Visitors must practice social distancing, and no organized or contact activities or sports are allowed. The following remain closed to the public: playgrounds, picnic areas, exercise stations and equipment, restrooms, buildings and facilities, tennis courts, including for skateboarding, and basketball courts. Visitors are reminded that the township personnel will be enforcing social distancing and other requirements. If the rules are not followed and health and safety are consequently put in jeopardy, we would be constrained to consider rescinding the order reopening the parks. I'm confident, though, that residents and visitors will follow the rules of the governor's executive order, the county executive's executive order, and the township administrative order, and that all will be able to continue to enjoy our parks in the long term. On May 1, Governor Murphy signed Executive Order Number 135, suspending, among other things, in-person requirements for receipt of a marriage license and marriage ceremonies. Per the executive order, and for the duration of the public health emergency, individuals wishing to marry or enter into a civil union may satisfy statutory requirements under certain conditions by making use of technology. The township's Registrar of Vital Statistics and our IT office are working to set up the necessary hardware and software required to enable marriage license applicants to remotely provide documentation to satisfy all requirements consistent with the governor's order. The township will notify the public via all communications channels when this remote process is available. Our Department of Community Services will resume bulk waste collection on its regular schedule starting tomorrow, Wednesday, May 6, 2020. Quantities and types of bulk waste will continue to follow the township's published guidelines, and these and other information can be found on the township's DCS website. The Essex County drive-through testing site in Weequahic Park in Newark will be open every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for COVID-19 testing until further notice. Essex County residents can make an appointment for a test, whether they have symptoms or not, by clicking www.essexcovid.org and then by following the instructions to schedule a test. If Essex County residents do not have internet access, they may call 973-324-9950 between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. to schedule an appointment. It is very important for all to complete their Census 2020 forms. As of yesterday, our township's 2020 census self-response rate is 62.3%. We can do better. We must do better, as the results of the 2020 census will help determine how hundreds of billions of dollars in federal funding flow into communities like our township for the next decade. That funding shapes many different aspects of each community, no matter the size or location. I urge everyone who has not yet done so to take 10 minutes and complete the 2020 census form. And then, to ensure that our community is counted, please remind your friends, family members, and neighbors to respond. Responding is safe, quick, and important, and a response can be made by phone, by mail, or online. More information can be found by clicking 2020census.gov. For COVID-19 related information from the state, visit the state's one-stop-shop COVID-19 information hub, covid19.nj.gov. Remember, there's no dash between COVID and 19. I'd like to again point specifically that within the state's COVID-19 information hub is its jobs and hiring portal. As of this afternoon, 57,289 jobs with 830 different companies were posted. One seeking employment can search for jobs by industry, by location, and by other filters. General questions about COVID-19 may be posed by calling the state's Comprehensive Information and Referral Service by dialing 211. Medical questions about COVID-19 may be posed by calling the state's information line at 800-962-1253. These numbers are staffed 24 hours a day. New Jerseyans, this is critical. New Jerseyans feeling the emotional and mental toll of COVID-19 can get support from a special health line. New Jersey Mental Health Cares, the state's behavioral health information and referral service, is offering help to people dealing with anxiety and worry related to COVID-19. New Jerseyans can call 1-866-202-HELP. That is 866-202-4357 for free confidential support, and this line is staffed from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week by live trained specialists. For township COVID-19 related information, please visit our township's website's COVID-19 section for updates on township operations during the crisis. And of course, if you haven't signed up for the township's Swift 911 alert system, you are urged to do so now to receive township updates by blast. The sign-up form can be accessed from our website's homepage. And of course, you can follow our Facebook page, Montclair NJ USA, and the township Twitter feed at montclairnj.gov. Lastly, again, I want to take a moment to reiterate my sincere thank you and to express my gratitude to all of our township public health staff, our Department of Community Services personnel, as well as our public safety, information technology, Department of Utilities, Office of Emergency Management, and all other township personnel who have been working very, very hard to keep us safe, keep us connected, and keep us informed. I'm grateful for our personnel and for their efforts. I'm appreciative of their dedication, and I continue to be proud to be a member on their team. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Stafford. Very, very comprehensive. We appreciate it. Council comments? I'll start with our remote friends. Councilor Hurlock?
No comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Stafford, and the incredible staff that you have at the town, and I hope everyone is safe and well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Slager?
Yes, I would repeat that. Thank you to everyone on our staff, and send my best wishes to everybody, and hope everyone is healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Russo? I guess he got tired of us. Deputy Mayor McMahon?
Thank you, Mayor. In this very interesting time, as we know, the EMTs have been a big thing. In May is EMT month, and the week of May 17th to 23rd is EMT week, and hopefully we'll have a proclamation for them. But again, Montclair's ambulance unit and needs your support, as does Tony's Kitchen. The food banks are overwhelmed. So whatever you can do is amazingly appreciated. And people have done a lot. It's been great. People, everything from dropping off donuts to large checks. So hopefully they kept it up. We were supposed to have a gala. Actually, our St. Patrick's Day gala was rescheduled to May 29th. It doesn't appear as if that's going to happen, but stay tuned. We'll talk about it more at next meeting. But thanks to all of our Montclair employees, and best of luck to everybody. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, I'm back on. Mayor?
Thank you.
Back on.
Go right ahead,
Mayor, I'm
Councilor.
back on.
Okay. Do you have any comments?
Just wanted to say thank you to everyone for the condolences for my mother last month passing, and thank everyone from my heart for all your wishes. And thank you for contributing to MESH. I've asked everyone to make donations to MESH, Montclair Emergency Services for the Homeless, and my mom's name. So also with Teacher Appreciation Week, I just want to reiterate again that so many of us are teaching from home, students learning from home. It's very difficult, but we're all pulling through. So I want to salute our teachers, the members of the MEA teaching in Montclair, and the members of the AFT teaching at Montclair State University. Montclair State AFT teachers. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. I think we're good. Motion to adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Gee whiz, I really want to go, don't I? I'm sorry, Councilor Slager, Councilor Spiller.
You get it there, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also certainly want to express our sincere wishes that everybody at home is doing well, their families are well, making sure you're staying safe. Hopefully, as Mr. Stafford noted, and we begin to ease some pieces, like lifting some of the restrictions at parks and some other places. I know I've had the opportunity to get out there and see many people who are following the distancing requirements and doing what they should. So a big thank you to everyone out there doing what they can in their part. We will get through this together as we engage in what the new normal looks like. So I thank you for that piece as well. Mr. Stafford highlighted two things that I think are so important. Number one, the census. I know all of us who are getting this information are looking at those numbers and seeing how our residents here in Montclair are responding. Certainly it matters how we do, but it certainly matters how we do in relation to our neighbors and those in neighboring townships and cities around us. And certainly that number is one that we'd all like to see higher. Those dollars that come in, as was noted from the federal level, are all dependent on those census numbers. And we want to outperform every single town around us to make sure that we are getting every dollar we should back here in Montclair. So there's a lot going on, we know, and these are difficult times, but if you can take that chance, we ask you to fill out that census information, do it online, do it in the paper form they send you, but either way, get that back. That is huge. As also noted by Mr. Stafford, something going on around here that I think we're loosely aware of. There's an election coming up on May 12th. So certainly a reminder that if you haven't mailed in your ballot, please do so. It is a difficult time for us all to be out there making sure voters know who is running, what everyone stands for, but please remember to take the time, find that ballot, return that ballot, and make sure you vote and participate in the process. It's fundamental to our democracy and certainly helps provide a voice for what Montclair will look like in the next number of years. So we thank you for that as well. And with that, I'll also echo Councilman Russo's points. Just really great work going on. I've noted every chance I get, educators are doing a great job, our kids are doing a great job, parents are doing a great job, but as we talk about education, Educators Appreciation Week, it is really just something special to see what's going on throughout Montclair, and we also appreciate that and want to note it. So with that, Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Spiller. Councilor Baskerville?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Katya Woak, our IT director, for doing an amazing job, and I'd like to thank the manager, staff, certainly you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your correspondence to the entire council so that we'll all be on the same page. And I'd like to just let the people that are responding on the front line in the hospitals, in all of the emergency areas, our police, our firefighters, just thank them for what they're doing every day and let you all know that I don't take it lightly that you are actually risking your life so that others can live and so that people can find their way through this coronavirus pandemic. I'd like to give a shout out to all of the teachers, our Montclair teachers, the MEA for sure, but also the East Orange Education Association and all of the amazing teachers that I work with in East Orange. And also, some of us have already mentioned that it's Teachers Awareness Week, but it's also Nurses Awareness Week. And so I'd like to shout out the nurses that I work with in the East Orange Early Childhood Department for doing such an amazing job. Let you know how much I appreciate you, and most of you are also on the front line and risking your life. I'd like to encourage people that as we began to lift some of the isolation and allow people to do things, it is very important, we can't stress it enough, to remain social distancing. And I got a few emails and some Facebook correspondence today where people were asking for masks. So I do have masks. So if you're listening or you know someone that is in need of one, please text me at 973-477-1146 or email me, and I'll try to make sure that you can have one in appropriate fashion so that we don't have to actually have contact. So if you give me your address or something, we'll work that out at a later time. So I want to extend my condolences to the many, many people who have lost family, friends, and others, many resulting from the coronavirus, but others for natural causes. It's never easy to lose a loved one, but at a time such as this, when you can't be with that person and you can't hug them and hold them and console them, you know, I just want to send my heartfelt condolences and let you know that I'm here lifting you and praying for you, because it gets even more complicated when you're not there. And some of the things that we're learning, I guess, or experiencing more of during this time, it seems to be kindness and service and helping others. So for those who are not doing all the kind gestures that you were doing, I hope that you continue to do them. And you know, especially look out for your seniors, for people that you know may not have adequate food and sustenance, and people who may be alone and not have family, because it is very important. As the manager mentioned a little while ago, you know, about mental health. So aside from the obvious pandemic that affects us physically, certainly this is a very stressful time for all of us, and sometimes just reaching out to check on a person and make sure they're okay can make all the difference. If you know people that are in need of more mental health than just you reaching out to them and letting them know that you care, please make sure to try to help them to get it. We've lost children resulting from suicide, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are in need of just some extra help during this time. So I'd like to commend everyone for the amazing job that we're doing in Montclair, and to let you know that I'm not surprised. Montclair, we always do things in a great way. The only thing that we haven't done in such a great way is the census, and certainly we've never been at the bottom of anything before. So when I saw your correspondence, Mr. Mayor, I think, what, 16 out of 22, so the
That's
bottom.
correct. That's
Yeah,
correct.
no, we can do better, Montclair, so let's pull that up and do it in Montclair style. Let's pull it up to the top. Please get your census in, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Did I leave anybody out? I don't want to say. I don't think- Yes,
You,
Mr.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm good. I'm good. Motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone.
Thank you.